Thank you so much for staying with us. We continue our Radio Jamaica at 70 series of interviews. Today we're talking to Cliff Hughes, who started out on the graveyard shift here at Radio Jamaica, progressed to the sports department, and he had started to talk to us about his entry into the news department. First of all, a correction. My listeners know me and Dayton are friends. So this Jamaica Flour Mills disaster was on September 26, 1988. My sincere apologies. What had happened was that I was trying to check up how many decades it had been, and right underneath it I had 98. I read that by accident. So thank you so many of my listeners for sharing that with us. But let me go back, speaking of 88, let's go back to 1988 with another clip from Cliff reporting on Hurricane Gilbert.
Hundreds of men, women and children are on the hunt for food and household items in the western end of the city. Many of them barely clad in t-shirts and shorts are moving about barefooted with scandal bags full of canned stuff, cigarettes and toilet paper, as well as sanitary napkins. It's reported that a group of policemen had to fire shots near West Indies Glass Company on Spanish Town Road a short while ago to ward off bands of looters. As is the case elsewhere, Spanish Town Road is littered with fallen trees, power lines, utility poles, zinc and other debris.
All right, now just a couple of your comments. Jordan on Twitter says, loving this interview, goes to show disappointments have a way of working out sometimes. And Paradigm Shift also says, I love this interview. And Robert Nestor Morgan says, good stuff. Javian also enjoying it. And over on my WhatsApp line, Dwight in Spanish Town says, Cliff Hughes, a giant in the Jamaican media landscape, a fearless and truthful reporter with impeccable credibility, another mentor who has given opportunity to many. We are privileged to have had the presence of Cliff like a rock, Hughes. Wow. Right, there you go. You gather your roses now that you're here. Talk to me about the Gilbert reporting, though. The Gilbert,
Gilbert was another milestone in my career because I taught geography in high school. Yes, I'm a trained teacher. I taught geography, so I have an interest in hurricanes. Somehow I feel in another life I would be either a meteorologist or a volcanologist, yes? And I watch the Atlantic hurricane season very closely. And the Sunday before Gilbert struck, I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday, yes? I said to my family, I was living at Windward Way off Windward Road at the time, and I said, this hurricane is heading straight to Jamaica. And I quickly mobilized my neighbors, and a group of us went on the roofs, and we battened down and tightened up, and I packed my bag and said, I'm going to work, and we make sure that, we're going to tuck in, please stay in. And I went to RGR, and we started working, reporting. And Dionne, listeners, Hurricane Gilbert was frightening. I remember one moment, we were in the newsroom, and we hear this loud bang, and everybody felt as if it was one of the towers on the outside, where the place turned pitch black, and we all headed for the stairs, dashing downstairs. And when we reached downstairs, there's a little landing just before the entrance to the building, and at the foot of the stairs, somebody said, Terry. I don't know if you know Terry. Terry Smith was one of our great industrial relations labor reporters, but he had a physical handicap, and he had to walk with the help of a walking stick. And we all dashed out to the newsroom leaving Terry. And it was as if those of us gathered on the landing looked at each other. Yeah, and then there was Terry pushing the newsroom door, making his way downstairs. That was one. Are you there?
Listening. What you mean, man? I listen to the story like I listen to them. Caught up in the story.
There was Terry Smith, and we all breathed a collective sigh of relief, right? And of course, guilt. Yeah?
Yes.
And then the other thing is, after the hurricane had passed, and we rode rode it out at 32 Linders Road. Lloyd Pusey, Patrick Anderson, David Geddes, and myself set out to go as far west as possible. In one of those.
Hold that thought for just a moment, in fact, and let's hear a little bit of that journey. Spanish Town Hospital.
When we checked at the Spanish Town Hospital, the situation was grim. The standby generator was down, leaving the hospital without electricity. The problem was made even worse by a leaking roof, which flooded the maternity ward and the operating theatre. Expectant mothers had to be transferred to another section of the hospital. I saw at least 10 mothers and their days-old babies huddled together in a small room and an adjoining passage. The situation in the operating theatre was even more disturbing. Nurses there had to be delivering babies without electricity, water, and in water boots in flood waters inside the theatre. One sister told me she was worried about the increased possibilities of post-birth complications such as the contraction of pneumonia. Congratulations are in order for the valiant nurses and other workers at the Spanish Town Hospital. During the full fury of Hurricane Gilbert, 24 more babies made their entry into a devastated Jamaica. On the injury list, 42 people were treated and sent home, most for lacerations. 8 were admitted. The elements stopped our penetration into the deep rural communities. However, Councillor Wills of the Old Harbour North Division of the St. Catherine Parish Council said cash crops and livestock were destroyed by Hurricane Gilbert. He also said no relief has reached the deep rural communities of St. Catherine. There's now a desperate need for food and other emergency supply.
You know, I was going to cut that short, but I was actually enjoying it.
Wow.
So I was descriptive and evocative and taking us there. So you were doing what? You said you wanted to go as far west as possible, so you were just stopping along the way and sending in reports?
Yes, that's what we were all, the 4 of us were attempting to do. And then we had a moment when we entered the gorge, River Road, and the Rio Cobre was in full state. I think looking back, we were stupid. Yeah, we were really tempting fate.
Youthfully exuberant?
Absolutely, I think so. And the car was being flooded. The water had the car drifting out of control. And we were now, the 4 of us, the 3 of us, were seated on the windows, yes? While I can't recall who was the driver. I don't remember who was the driver. Was it? I think it would have been Lloyd was the driver. But all I know, there was another rush and gust, and I hear Patrick Anderson. I cannot repeat on radio the bad word. Yes? And I looked at him and I said, what the? We should be praying. We're about to die.
Really? You were that worried?
Yes. It's one of those old Isuzu cars. Yeah? It was in a 4-wheel drive. Yeah? And the water, it was just floating.
Wow.
And we were at one moment considering whether we should abandon the car.
Wow.
But when you look at the road, you couldn't see the surface of the road, and the rear Cobra was raging. Yeah? No, that was a moment. Patrick, I understand myself reflect on it for a number of years after that.
How did you get out though?
Well, somehow we regained control of the vehicle. Yeah? And we decided, you know what? It's time to turn around.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my lasting experience of Hurricane Gilbert.
That story could have ended so differently.
Absolutely, yes.
So what did you find, especially as you went further away from Kingston?
Devastation. Yeah. And there were some lasting images floating fridges, refrigerators, other items of furniture, waterways completely flooded, some people on the streets looting, yes, and you wondered, how would we get through this? How would we come back after this? The country was really gutted. You know, you pass houses, what's left of houses, without roofs. Yeah, you know, it was horrible.
Now, shifting from, well, I tell you what, I'm just about at sports. I'm just going to have to take the break, take sports, okay. But you'll be back with us, right?
You call me back.
Okay. Cliff Hughes talking to us as we continue our series of interviews celebrating 70 years of Radio Jamaica, and he'll be back with us after sports.